welcome back to a chapter day. Happy Monday, first day of a new week and last Monday of the old year 2024. We are heading into a new year in another day or so, and I know we all can tell some stories about 2024. God knows what awaits us for 2025, but we gotta keep on praying and keep on trusting that God has it. He has our backs, as we say. God is still in control, and prayer works wonders. Okay, so we are heading into 2 Kings chapter 6. Yesterday we saw Elisha healing a leper, a Syrian leper, a captain of the king's army by the name of Naaman. He came to Israel on the suggestion of a little girl. So I'm telling you, God can use children. If Satan can use children, God even more so. So he came because this little girl who was captured from the Israelites told him about a man in Israel who can heal him. And he came with gifts, and Elisha didn't even confront him face to face. He sent his servant out to give him the message. And of course, Naaman, being a big captain of the king of Syria's army, he was offended. Like, he didn't even come out to meet me. And then Elisha told him, go wash in the Jordan 7 times. And the Jordan apparently was not very appealing. So he wondered, why couldn't he go home to his wonderful clear, clean rivers in Syria and take his, his healing there? But eventually his wise servants convinced him, go ahead and do what the prophet said. And he did it, and he was cleansed of his leprosy. He went back to offer Elisha gifts. Elisha refused. He would not take as much as a nickel from him. But Elisha's servant Gehazi had a different idea. He wanted some things, and he feigned being sent by Elisha, ran back to Naaman, took some silver and some clothing, being deceptive and telling lies on Elisha. And when he got back, Elisha said, what have you done, Gehazi? And he was like, me, I didn't do anything. I didn't go anywhere. Telling more lies. Once you start, it's hard to stop because you got to keep covering up the ones you told prior. But anyway, Elisha told him, you know what? This is no time for taking gifts, etc. And sometimes God's people need to remember that, especially those in leadership positions. When God is using you to work, if you are healing people, you don't charge. That's God's power you are using. You're going to charge. Does God charge you to use his power? Why are you charging people to do something that is God ordained? So he told him the leprosy that was on Naaman will now be on him and his seed. Sad to say, sometimes your family pays for the foolish things that you do too. I hope we keep that in mind. Okay, so now we're moving on to chapter 6. And the sons of the prophets said unto Elisha, behold now, the place where we dwell with thee is too strait for us. Let us go, we pray thee, unto Jordan, and take thence every man a beam, and let us make us a place there where we may dwell. And he answered, go ye. And one said, be content, I pray thee, and go with thy servants. And he answered, I will go. So he went with them, and when they came to Jordan, they cut down wood. But as one was felling a beam, the axe fell into the water, and he cried and said, alas, master, for it was borrowed. So remember the 100 prophets that he was feeding in the previous chapter. He now has them, they are now telling him, hey, where we are here maybe is not enough for all of us to dwell. So we are going to go and chop down wood in a forest so that we maybe can start building our own little homes, to dwell in. So as they will go, and they invited him to go along with them. So as they were going along, one of them who had borrowed an axe from someone else was chopping down, using it. And maybe, sometimes these things didn't have proper sealing. So when he used it, maybe the head of the axe flew off into the water, and he cried out because he knew that this was not his axe. Okay, verse 6. And the man of God said, where fell it? And he showed him the place, and he cut down a stick and cast it in thither, and the iron did swim. Now I'd ask you, whoever heard of iron swimming? And remember, iron back then was like gold, almost. That was a new material discovered, and it was very costly, very pricey. So that's why he was so concerned. But Elisha allowed the iron to come up and to float on top of the water. Verse 7, therefore said he, take it up to thee, and he put out his hand and took it. Then the king of Syria warred against Israel, and took counsel with his servants, saying, in such and such a place shall be my camp. And the man of God sent unto the king of Israel, saying, beware that thou pass not such a place, for thither the Syrians are come down. And the king of Israel sent to the place which the man of God told him, and warned him of, and saved himself there not once, but twice. So the king of Syria keeps threatening to come against Israel, and every time he does, Elisha is given that prophecy from God, and he goes to the king of Israel and tells him, this is where the king of Syria and his army will be, avoid there. So it happened not just one time, it happened 2 times. Verse 11, therefore the heart of the king of Syria was sore troubled for this thing, and he called his servants and said unto them, will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? And one of his servants said, none, my lord, O king, but Elisha the prophet, that is in Israel. Tell the king of Israel the words that thou speakest in thy bedchamber. And he said, go and spy where he is, that I may send and fetch him. And it was told him, saying, behold, he is in Dothan. Therefore sent he hither horses and chariots and a great host, and they came by night and compassed the city about. And when the servant of the man of God was risen early and gone forth, behold, an host compassed the city both with horses and chariots. And his servant said unto him, alas, my master, how shall we do? Okay, so the king of Syria thought he had a traitor among him. So he asked his servants, which one of you is the one selling us out every time to the king of Israel, that he knows when we are coming to attack him? So they said, it's none of us, king. It is that prophet Elisha. So the king of Syria now sends for them to capture Elisha. And he has a new servant, I guess, because he fired Gehazi, had to leave with the leprosy. So he is saying, in the morning when he woke up, they're around their place, wherever they lived, they're surrounded by soldiers from the king of from the king of Syria's army. And of course his servant maybe he doesn't know the power of the God that Elisha serves. So he says, my master, how shall we do? So he's afraid. Verse 16, and he answered, fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. And we need to remember that. Sometimes we feel like we are overwhelmed by the people and the things and the events that are happening in our lives. Those that be with us are more than be with them. And we need to keep that in mind. Okay. Verse 17, and Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. And when they came down to him, Elisha prayed unto the Lord and said, smite this people, I pray thee, with blindness. And he smote them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. And Elisha said unto them, this is not the way, neither is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. But he led them to Samaria. And it came to pass, when they would come into Samaria, that Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men, that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. Here's what's happening. After Elisha prayed, he prayed because his servant was afraid. And he must have been a new servant, okay, replacing Gehazi. He prayed that God would open his servant's eyes. And when he opened his eyes, he saw chariots, horses and chariots of fire. That's what I think I was referring to previously. What exactly, when Elijah was taking up a chariot of fire, what exactly did that look like? So this servant here, he is seeing those that are with them, God's angels, God's servants, are more than those of the king of Syria, which is Satan's army. Can't outnumber God at any time. Okay, it's 2 to 1. If you remember, he only took a third of the angels in heaven, so God kept 2/3, and God can do anything. Okay, so he saw the armies of God, and Elisha prayed that God would smite those Syrian soldiers with blindness. Now, I don't know if this is the kind of blindness where you cannot see anything, or blindness where they are unaware. Because apparently, if he could lead them, that means they were able to move and go wherever they needed to go. But when you have spiritual blindness, you are unaware of what God is doing. And I think that is the problem. That's the problem that took place with them. And by the time they realized what was happening, Elisha had led them into Samaria, which is an Israelite city. So let's see what happens. Verse 21. And the king of Israel said unto Elisha when he saw them, My father, shall I smite them? Shall I smite them? And he answered, Thou shalt not smite them. Wouldest thou smite those whom thou hast taken captive with thy sword and with thy bow? Set bread and water before them, that they may eat and drink and go to their master. And he prepared great provision for them. And when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away, and they went to their master. So the bands of Syria came no more into the land of Israel. And it came to pass after this, that Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, gathered all his host, and went up and besieged Samaria. And there was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it until an ass's head was sold for 80 pieces of silver, and the 4th part of a cab of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. Okay, so here's what's happening. It's like after the high rise, then you have a fall so low. After the Syrian army came into Samaria, the king of Israel was asking Elisha, should we smite them? Should we kill them? Elisha said, no, don't kill them. Feed them. Whoever heard of that? But feed your enemies, yeah? So he fed them and they let them go. And then later on, the king of Syria came at them again and encompassed the whole of Samaria. So I'm wondering, was that a good thing for them to let them go? I don't know. But Samaria was stricken with famine because no one could leave. They encompassed the whole city and no one could leave the city because the Syrian army was there obstructing them, blocking them off. So in that city, they were eating. I have heard of famines and how awful it can be in some places. I have seen pictures on television, even as a child when I was growing up, of children in Africa starving, bones and skin, crying, mothers crying. It's horrible. So here the people are down to eating their donkeys, their animals. The donkey's head is being sold for 4 pieces of silver. Imagine that. And a cab of dove's dung. We know what dung is. It's the excrement of the animal, of a dove. They're selling that for 5 pieces of silver. So you know things are really bad in Samaria. Right after they had the defeat of the Syrian army, they didn't kill anyone. They fed them and let them go. Now they are in captivity. Verse 26. And as the king of Israel was passing by upon the wall, there cried a woman unto him, saying, Help, my lord, O king. And he said, If the Lord do not help thee, when shall I help thee? Out of the barn floor or out of the winepress? And the king said unto her, What aileth thee? And she answered, This woman said unto me, Give thy son that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. You see how bad things are. People are eating each other, eating their children. Verse 29. So we boiled my son and did eat him. And I said unto her on the next day, Give thy son that we may eat him. And she hath hid her son. And it came to pass when the king heard the words of the woman that he rent his clothes, and he passed by upon the wall, and the people looked. And behold, he had sackcloth within upon his flesh. So when the king heard what was going on, I guess he maybe wasn't aware of how bad things were among his people. When he heard of the people eating their children, he went into sackcloth and ashes. Mercy. Verse 31. Then he said, God do so and more also to me, if the head of Elisha, the son of Shaphat, shall stand on him this day. But Elisha sat in his house, and the elders sat with him, and the king sent a man from before him. But ere the messenger came to him, he said to the elders, see ye how this son of a murderer hath sent to take away mine head? Look, when the messenger cometh, shut the door and hold fast at him. Is not the sound of his master's feet behind him? And while he yet talked with them, behold, the messenger came down unto him, and he said, behold, this evil is of the Lord. What should I wait for the Lord any longer? Oh my. So what's happening here? Whew. The king of Syria is blaming Elisha for the famine. I'm not quite sure why. If it is because of Elisha's advice to let the Syrian army go, and now the Syrians are the ones that are after them and obstructing their city from prospering, and they are starving. There's a famine. So I guess he's blaming Elisha. So he sends men out to Elisha, and Elisha is sitting in his house, and the people come up to his door, and and Elisha is saying, well, I guess, I'm not sure if it's Elisha is saying, behold, this evil is of the Lord. What should I wait for the Lord any longer? Or I think the king, it may be saying that. He knows what is happening to Israel at that time. The famine is because God has maybe held back from helping them, and he's wondering if he should wait for the Lord any longer, or maybe go on and fight against the Syrians. But it's terrible. And I myself, I'm not quite sure, because there's not many details between the defeating and letting go of the Syrian army. And it said the bands of Syria came to no more into the land of Israel, until Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, gathered a host and decided he would go and besiege Samaria. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. It's kind of confusing a little bit here, because after they let the Syrian army go, Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, sent out a host to besiege Samaria. So that Samaria went into famine, and the king of Israel is going after Elisha, because I believe he's blaming Elisha for their predicament. That's the end of chapter 6 of 2 Kings. Wow. I tell you, sometimes we wonder, where is God? You know, after we saw God's hand powerful, mighty, and then after that, it's like wind. We hear nothing. We don't see anything. We don't hear anything. Wind is just passing through, and stuff is happening. They're in a famine till they're eating their children, each other, donkeys, cow, dove dung. It's bad. My gosh, Lord help us. Well, folks, that's the end of our reading for today. I pray that you are reading along. I pray that you are getting some thoughts and ideas about something spiritual in your life. And I thank you all for viewing. Almost a whole year now. January 5th will be exactly 1 year I started doing these recordings. And I'm thankful for whoever has been listening and getting inspiration from it. So until our next reading, remember, keep on listening, because faith comes when we hear God's word. Take care. Bye.